going to get started here. So, la grâce de Jésus soit avec vous. Bienvenue à toutes les personnes participantes à cette séance d'apprentissage. Pour accéder à la traduction simultanée, il s'agit de glisser votre souris ou vos doigts sur l'écran pour voir le petit globe en bas de page. Cliquez sur le globe et choisir la langue dans laquelle vous voulez écouter, français ou anglais. Une fois que vous aurez choisi la langue, Zoom se changera de passer de l'orateur au traducteur. Bonne réunion ce soir. Friends, grace and peace to you in Jesus' name. Welcome to everyone who is participating in this learning session. To access simultaneous translation, you just need to glide your mouse or your finger across the screen to uncover the little globe that's at the bottom of the page. You may need to click on the More button. It might be in there. When you find that globe, click on it, choose the language that you would like to listen to, English or French. Once you've chosen the language, Zoom will take care of moving between the speaker and the translator. I hope that this is a good gathering time for you tonight. As we gather tonight, we take a moment to give thanks. To give thanks to God for all that is. To give thanks for the sky that is above us and the weather, whether it's rain or freezing rain or snow or sun or wind that we have experienced today. We give thanks for the earth and all that has grown from that earth, for the plants, for the trees, for the fish of the waters, for the birds that fly through the air, for the animals that live on this land and with this land, including us, human beings. We give thanks for this moment and for all that is. As we give thanks, we need to remember that it has been tens of thousands of years that people have walked this land, that people have been a part of this territory. And that's anywhere we are in the place that many of us call Canada. Long before my settlers, my ancestors came to this place as settler and colonizer, there were people who lived here, and there are people who lived here and live here. The First Nations and the First Peoples of this land. They have been a part of this land for so many years, and they continue to be a part of this land. We give thanks for the elders. We give thanks for all that they hold in the stories that they have been given. We give thanks for their teaching. We give thanks for the adults and the children and the babies of the nations who are here. Even as we give thanks, we need to recognize that the relationship between colonizer and the people of this land has been broken from the very beginning, and in many ways continues to be broken. As part of the United Church of Canada, an institution that has been part of the colonial process, we recognize this reality, and we recognize that if truth is going to be lived, if reconciliation is going to be real, if reparation and right relationship is going to happen, then we can't just set this story in history. We need to remember that this is about who we are here and now. And so I would ask you to take a moment to remember where you are, to remember whose territory it is upon which you live and work. And I'd like to ask you to think about what your responsibility is in the work of right relationship with the First Nations of this land. And what the next step is that you want to take in helping to build the possibilities for today and for the days to come. I would invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land and on the people of the land. May God grant us the grace and the wisdom and the strength and the ability to do and be what needs to be done and who we need to be. Amen. Friends, let's continue our gathering in this space of worship with our call to gather.
We come from where we are and know that we're called to this community in this time. With deep spirituality in bold discipleship and for daring justice, we come to receive what is offered. We pray that we might be present in this time, that we might be brave and bold and blessed. Thanks be to God.
Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him.
Jésus et ses disciples partirent ensuite vers les villages proches de Césarée de Philippe. En chemin, il leur demanda, "Que disent les gens à mon sujet?" Ils lui répondirent, "Certains disent que tu es Jean-Baptiste, et d'autres que tu es Élie, et d'autres encore que tu es l'un des prophètes." "Et vous?" leur demanda Jésus, "Qui dites-vous que je suis?" Pierre lui répondit, "Tu es le Messie." Alors Jésus leur ordonna de n'en parler à personne.
I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. I'm gonna live so God can use me anywhere, Lord, anytime. God
Excellent. I love seeing you dance, and I love seeing you dance in the chat. The dancing in the chat is just super fun and was unexpected and made me smile. So thanks for dancing in the chat too. Actually, I know somebody who used to sing, or sometimes I guess they still might sing by like typing the lyrics in the chat as the hymns go on too. So they would like sing in the chat as we went through. It was super fun. Anyway, welcome again, everyone. It is great to have you all here with us for this learning session. And so again, this is time for learning, for questions of clarification, and to get more information, a better understanding of why the proposals are before us and the outcomes that might be being sought. So that's our point. So we're going to try and stay away from our opinions and try and stay away from getting into discussion about the items. That's for the discussion session, which happens in June. And I will let you know as well, for folks who aren't aware, in the discussion sessions, you get to talk about whatever you want, right? You can just have at her. Now, you do need to prioritize your time because we do have limited time. But the ways, as Richard was kind of saying, as the moderator was kind of saying, as we were getting started, there's a lot of ways that we're kind of trying to get a sense of what the best way forward is. And so folks have proposed things because they have something that they think the church needs to deal with, and they've done some thinking about what a suggested way forward might be. But that's up for us. And we're hearing from partners, we're hearing from different people in different places that also bring in different ideas into our thinking and into our conversation. So y'all get to prioritize your time in your discussion group and have the conversations that you need to have. You don't have to spend time talking about each proposal individually. Might be because you think it's fantastic and you just want to do it. Might be because you think it's mainly fantastic, you don't need to spend time on it. Might be because you don't think we need to be spending time talking about it right now, whether that's because you like it or you dislike it or whatever. We're trying to figure out the conversations we need to have as the general council to push us forward, to move us forward, to get the best work done and be the best church we can be. So yeah, that's just a little preview, a reminder for the discussion sessions as well. So folks who are here to answer your questions are assuming that you've read the proposals, watched the videos, and that you have some more stuff that you want to kind of get at or you're wanting to learn. So please ask your questions either here or in the Q&A and feed loop, and we'll do our best to get you the answers. Questions beforehand are great. We try to get some answers in there when we can. Sometimes the folks in the real-time session will reply, kind of verbally answer some of those questions, and we'll try to get answers in there as well. I put answers into earlier sessions earlier today too. So we're still working on it, trying to get as many answers as we can. During this session, please ask your question by raising your virtual hand, which you can do by going down to the reactions, or if you don't see the reactions, to the more, 3 dots in the more, and clicking raise your hand. I can't see y'all. There's over 180 of you. So if you just raise your hand like this, I'm not going to be able to see that. So please raise your virtual hand. And then we'll recognize you and try to get your question answered as best we can now. And if we can't do it right now, later. As well, putting questions in the chat is totally fine. That is a thing you can use to chat with the person next to you at your table, but it's not really part of the formal session for this meeting. So we're not keeping track of questions in the chat. If you want to ask your questions in the chat because you kind of want to ask a question to somebody just around you, that's great, that's fantastic, but it's not part of this formal session. We're not going to be trying to monitor that as well. We're just working on the real time. Raise your virtual hand. We'll get people to answer your questions. I feel like I've said the same thing all the time. I feel like I jumped through a whole bunch of stuff quicker, although Richard did a lovely job for some of you, those of you who are here waiting. The moderator went through some of the different ways we do stuff and why we do it before. And I was like, moderator stealing my glory for my intro time, but that's great. We've got a lot of that out, and many of you have been to many of these and heard me say this many times. As we get started, today, I'm going to invite the General Secretary to join me in the spotlight to give a little bit of context for some of the proposals that are we're going to be learning some more about today.
Thanks, Alan, and good evening, folks. It's good to be here with you. I just wanted to provide brief context before we begin to attend to the proposals that we have before us this evening. You will have no doubt noted, as you have listened to the videos and read some of the scripts related to the videos, that some of the proposals tonight suggest that they are submitted by Unifaith. I want to review for you a bit how proposals come before the General Council. As the manual has outlined, proposals come to the General Council from 4 sources: regional councils, General Council Executive, committees of the General Council and the Executive, and members of the General Council, that is you as commissioners. According to the manual, then, Unifaith does not have any standing to put proposals before you for your consideration, because it does not fall under the 4 bodies that the manual identifies as bringing proposals to a General Council. The proposals before you tonight come from regional councils. After their careful debate and discernment, they have sent these proposals to you as the General Council for further discernment and action. The proposal tonight are being presented by members of the regional councils that forwarded these proposals to the General Council. If you have questions that are related to Unifaith process, this is not the context to raise those questions. Those questions you need to raise with Unifaith on your own. This is not the context. This context is for you to ask questions of the regional council representatives who have forwarded these proposals to you for your discernment and discussion. I hope that will be helpful to you as we go through the proposals tonight. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, General Secretary. So we're going to move along now to our first set of proposals before us, ARW01 and SW03. And I'm going to invite Barry Reeder, Jim Evans, and Robin Wardlaw, I believe. I have all your names down, although it might just be Barry to start. So not seeing anybody else popping up. So that means you get, there we go. Here's some others. I was going to say, otherwise Barry's just stuck going for it, but we're getting the other folks up here now. That's great.
Go Barry.
Thank you and welcome. So I'm not sure, one of you, if you want to feel the need to expand on the video that we've seen or answer any questions that have been there, I give you that opportunity. And if not, then we'll just go right into questions.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory between the proposal itself and the video. I think it might be more helpful to take questions, but.
Perfect. I'm good with that. And that's sometimes I do see the chat, even though I said I'm not watching it all the time. It is great to remind folks to please say your name and your regional council where you're coming from as you ask your question. So if anybody has questions on these, I invite you to raise your virtual hand. You can do that using the reactions button. If you touch your screen or move your mouse, hit reactions and raise hand, or if you don't see reactions, the more with the 3 dots.
So Alan, maybe you could clarify as far as which proposals that we're speaking towards. I think if we're following the agenda, Robin is up first, but you've drawn us all together and that's fine. But I think people need to know which proposal we're talking about right now, because I'm unclear.
I did state that, but I will state it again. So right now we're looking at ARW01.
Perfect.
SW03. So GCO and regional staff performance. That's the one that we are looking at right now. If anybody has questions, please raise your virtual hand and we can try and get those answered. And if not, that means that you're ready for some great discussion, which is fantastic too. Jane, I see a question. You will need to unmute yourself, Jane.
Thank you, Alan. I do need to unmute myself. I am Jane Van Patter. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the president of Antler River Watershed Region. I have a concern, and it's not a point of clarification so much at this point, Alan, and I realize I might take some time here, but I do need to get this out. And I've shared this earlier with the executive secretary, and she's been tremendously supportive in this regard. My concern is that regardless of what regions are involved in this, 2 regions have shared proposals and looking for similar outcomes or the same outcome. When I watched all the videos early this morning in Ontario, it was early this morning, most of the shared proposals from Antler River Watershed Region, and the other region is Shining Waters, most of those, the presenters at that were from Shining Waters. Let's go, no slam on Shining Waters. It just is to say, we were not as represented, our voice. So my concern as I watched all of those videos was feeling as though Antler River Watershed didn't have an opportunity to give voice to its concern and reasoning in the same way that Shining Waters did. I want to acknowledge as well that I don't think it was anything to do with Shining Waters. It's a process of how things are decided behind the scenes. And we are very new in this process. So I do understand that as well. And there's lots of learning. But in terms of equity, shared voice, shared expression, I realized in a late entry with one of the proposals, Antler River Watershed 03, and corresponding Shining Waters 04, we ended up with a presenter from both regions, both saying the same thing. So that was maybe redundant or a duplication, but I'm just saying going forward in our learning, we need to find a way that's, I realize we want to be efficient and expedient, but we also need to be giving voice to regions that share proposals. And my one concern later is one proposal that was presented noted that a line was left out of the proposal that Antler River Watershed had. And when we get to that, I want to explain why that line was left out, but we didn't have opportunity to give voice to that. Just putting it out there, Alan, you guys need to know. And Jim, from Antler River Watershed Region, speak up. We need our voice heard as you address the proposals tonight, along with Shining Waters.
Appreciate
And I will, sorry, I'll just reiterate that, again, that not fully understanding process, which is why the one piece was duplicated, and so recognizing we're all learning things anew, so trying to do things as efficiently as possible, and of course what we're presenting is a lot of research that was undertaken and a lot of information that was undertaken across regions. Which is why a lot of the information that and a lot of the research that has come about has come through from across the United Church of Canada, which again, we are gathered together as United Church of Canada, the General Council, you folks representing the whole church. And so what we have put together in our proposals that are coming this night, many of these are representative of the United Church of Canada as a whole.
So I am just going to respond quickly as well, and thank you, Jane. It was brought to our attention again, earlier, and so it is totally just something, as you said, that as we're learning in, growing into this, we realized that that didn't happen in the best way possible, and so we definitely have noted, and the desire is to. We want efficiencies when we can have efficiencies, but sometimes we realize afterwards that was not the best way to do stuff. So we've realized that one as best we can here, and are trying to make sure that we hear from the proponents for proposals from the different regional councils as we go forward, and in this time as well right now. Question from Kathy.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Kathy Hamilton, je suis de la région, le Conseil régional Nagonhaga. My question is whether the proposal is that reviews happen, or whether the proposal is specifically that 360 reviews happen. I'm not clear about what it is that's being offered.
It's performance reviews that we're looking at. We know that performance reviews happen with all staff, including senior staff. But we gather from listening across the country that in many regions, senior staff are doing a great job, and there just aren't many complaints that we're hearing. But in some regions, it looks like the review process is not working, is not adequate, because in some regions, it seems there is a person after another experiencing unusual things or unfortunate things that affect their ministry or their life. And so, sure, performance reviews are already happening, but if they were adequately effective, these things should be caught, is our opinion as members of Unifaith.
I think it's also important to remember that the 360 has a particular meaning in the United Church, and
thank you. Yes. Yeah.
And so we don't mean 360 in terms of our United Church nomenclature. 360 in terms of holistic review process where there's a meaningful, engaged, full review process, not our old manual 360 review. So just for clarity there.
Good point.
Got a follow up there, Kathy?
So 360.
Yeah, so I'm still really
Go ahead.
360 meaning?
Every point on the compass. So full circle. So looking at this person's work in relation to all the people they affect all around. That's where that comes from.
So Unifaith has the impression that there are reviews going on which are not effective. Is that what I'm hearing?
That seems to be the case, because the stories we hear suggest that from time to time, senior staff are not supporting ministers adequately. That there's this tendency or the other one. I don't want to get into any details. I don't want to name anyone in this process, but in some regions, there's a trail of tears, so to speak, whereas in other regions, there isn't. And if we had an adequate performance review system, it seems like that would be noted somehow, that a person could be offered a chance to reflect on their behavior, their performance, to improve it, to identify spots that they're not seeing yet, and something's happening or not happening, so that those people continue to have the same effect, the unfortunate effect on others year after year after year. Does that make sense?
Just checking. I'm hoping that's a answer for you-ish, Kathy. I do want to remind folks as well, we are dealing with the proposals that have been sent by the regional councils. And so it's the regional council proposals, and they may have come through other channels to the regional councils, but if we can deal with them as the regional council, you know, point of view as best we can, that's appreciated. Francis has a question.
Thank you. Francis Kitson, Living Skies region. I'm just wondering, so Robin, in response to the concerns you raised about the Trail of Tears, and if, you know, some senior staff are not adequately supporting, why are they still in their job? I'm wondering whether this concern has been raised with whichever branch of General Council is or GCO is responsible, and what their response has been.
Alan, may I ask Allison to come on and respond to that part instead of me?
Yeah, if you believe that Allison will have a better answer as somebody with more knowledge there, then that's
more direct knowledge than I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So individually, people have made all kinds of have given a great deal of information. And Unifaith as a body has also given information to the relevant parties, and has had what I guess I would describe as no effective response. And so it certainly has been the case that you know, people have been identified who may not be serving the needs of the church as well as we might hope, and encouraging our clergy to, you know, be the best ministers that they can be. And so given that information, then we feel that a new kind of process or a different kind of process needs to be in place.
Thank you. So reminder, folks, we do have 2.5 other proposals left in this block. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them. We can ask them in feed loop as well. Just reminder, we don't need to spend our time here if we don't need to spend our time, I guess. But if we need to, we'll do it. A question from Kofi. Kofi, yeah, go for it.
Oui, merci. Mon intervention se situe au niveau de la proposition ARW02 sur la responsabilité.
W02, on va parler à propos de 02 plus tard. Maintenant, on parle à propos de 01, Kofi.
D'accord, merci.
Okay, attends, s'il vous plaît, merci. Okay. So, Kofi's question was around 02, which is one we'll deal with in a second. Sharon, you have a question.
Sharon Lonas from Region 15. My question is, it sounds to me like what you're looking for is a standardized type of review. Is that correct?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it is a standardized review. As far as I know, all senior staff receive the same kind of performance review. So really what we're looking at is a review of the review, if that makes sense. Why, if everyone's getting more or less the same performance review every year or two, whatever it is, how is it that some people are not having brought to their attention things that are having a deleterious effect on the lives, the ministries of others in their region? There's something's not quite right, or we would see more consistency across the country with this kind of leadership. We all want the same thing. We want a church that's thriving, and that needs ministers who are thriving. And it's complicated, it's many moving parts, but we're hearing in the organization that we all belong to that many people have been deeply affected by a few senior staff, and so hence the proposal. And Shining Waters thought this was important and agreed with it. Can we look again at that? And we're getting ready to do a review of the whole structure, I think. So maybe in that context, this would be a significant part of it if this proposal passes, especially. Maybe it'd be part of it anyway, I don't know. But can we do better so that there's more consistency and more support for creative ministry?
Great, thank
I
you.
hope I answered your.
Yeah, and Shirley, I see your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. Shirley Cleve from Fundy St. Lawrence Stoney Waters. Just want clarity. The individuals that you've been speaking with that when you put this proposal together are members of Unifaith?
Not necessarily. May I turn to Allison again? Alan, with your permission.
Yeah, Allison, if you got the answer to the question, please chime in.
Yeah, so we hear from members of Unifaith and beyond Unifaith. So Unifaith has a number of public forums. So we have different kinds of information and education sessions. We've had, for instance, 2 cross-country checkups in the recent fall. So we have lots of sort of open forums where we hear from people and where people provide information. Some of them are Unifaith members and some of them are not. So both actually is the answer to that question.
Thank you. And can I ask one other question, Alan, for clarification?
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, just based on the last comment, not the last, the second last comment, whether this is a request of a review of creating a specific review process or a request to review the review process, because I think those are 2 different things. I'd like some clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think it matters to us as long as this concern is taken seriously, supposing it passes, that the commissioners agree that it's important, that it is taken seriously in the whole process of reviewing how we're living out the gospel. If this has helped identify a blind spot in our process, and we can go back and put our finger on, okay, well, how is it that it's not doing what's intended? That would be, it doesn't matter to us the exact manner in which that happens.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, folks. So I'm going to move on to the next one in a second. I do want to take the opportunity here to highlight, as it was just highlighted as well, but the way that the process we are using hopes to work as well. And that is to hear people, regional councils, whoever, who bring forward a concern and would like it dealt with somehow. And that we are not prescriptive. We like this proposal, must pass all of it. We don't like it. We're not going to pass it. But the concerns raised in it could be dealt with in another manner. And that's the process that we're trying to work through and towards. So we may choose to take no action on proposal, ARW01, because we are dealing with the concern raised in it in another new thing that the council decides it wants to do as it moves forward. So that's part of how we hope this process will work, and that we can not have to do stuff quite so isolated as we might have felt to in the past. So I'm just using that opportunity that was just given with the response there, Robin. Thank you, to highlight some of the process as well. So thank you to you all. I know we'll be seeing some of you again later. I'm going to invite now Mark Laird for WOW02. I refuse to put it together in a word because I'm going to be like that. So thank you, Mark. I don't know if you have anything you wish to say, respond to any questions before we begin, or if you just want to go right into the questions.
Yeah, I don't think so. In the video, I raised the 2 points of concern that were raised at the regional level when we passed this. So for like points of clarification, I mean. So yeah, questions is fine.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody have questions for WOW02, Western Ontario Waterways 02, including rest and renewal for general council and regional staff?
When we chose the name, we did we did choose it because there was an acronym in there. That was one of the reasons.
And I know you want me to use it, and someday I'm sure I have, and I'm sure I will again. But right now, I'm feeling like, no, I don't want to.
That's fine. And just to introduce myself, I'm Mark Laird. I'm the current, I believe, the president of Western Ontario Waterways.
I'm not seeing anybody jumping in with questions here, Mark. I'm guessing you did a fantastic job explaining it in your video. I know you did because I watched it too. So thank you.
I've done 2 and no questions on either. So
maybe we should get you to do all the videos. Thank you very much, Mark. I'm going to move us on now to SW05 and ARW04, jurisdiction of clergy, and I would invite Jim Evans to join me in the spotlight. Thanks. Welcome back. And do you have anything you wish to share specifically about this one before we, or questions to answer that already exist before we get to any questions?
And sorry, I believe that there's somebody else joining me on this one too. Yes, Barry. Yep.
Yep. Barry.
Yep.
Reader is welcome to join as well. I just have your name down for whatever reason. Sorry, Barry, you got missed for this one. Yep. I was confident you'd get somebody else, but I know y'all can sort it.
Yeah.
So are we ready to just go for questions?
And we'll go ahead with questions, please.
Perfect. So if anybody has questions about the proposal SW05 or ARW04, jurisdiction of clergy, please raise your virtual hand. Jane.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm still Jane Van Patter. I'm still president of Antler River Watershed. And Mark, I'm just going to say it. Wow, you did a great job. So in this proposal, Barry presented it, and he did make comment that Antler River Watershed Region had deleted a line from the proposal. And so I would like to explain that because we didn't have voice earlier in the video to do that. And the reason the line was dropped is because in the Antler River Watershed, there is already a chaplain as part of the staff complement. So there was no reason for us to say we need to do that. We already have a chaplain, and the region didn't feel it was their place to be asking other regions to sort of tell them what they should be deciding for their own staff complements. That should be a region's decision on their own. But at Antler River Watershed, there is a chaplain already on staff.
Yeah.
That's why that line was dropped.
Yeah, if I could speak briefly to that, because there was also another motion in Shining Waters to change the language around that. So the initial proposal was asking each region to employ, and there was quite a bit of conversation around that, and so it was changed as far as another motion, encouraged. And so part of it was recognizing that in some regions it's working and others it may not. And I think there was a concern around finances. I think that was the big one in Shining Waters. So we left it open, but I don't want to take away from the whole of the motion or the proposal, which is really looking at, how do we create more support for clergy to in their role, recognizing that we are, an institution that's declining, and because of that, there's been a lot of stress on clergy, and many times the congregation members are taking out on clergy, and so I think that's to highlight that whole thing, that there needs to be more support for clergy. Dealing with bullying and other things, and providing more collegial kind of support. So you're right, Jane, that you wanted that out of the proposal, but even in Shining Waters, there was some concerns about that, more around the finances and recognizing that there could be other ways that that support could be offered.
Thank you. Any other, sorry, That's, yeah, good. Any other questions on this one? Didn't see any yet. So I think, and we're pretty on time. Oh, Ryan's got one here. Okay, Ryan, come on in. I was excited. We were on my very rough agenda
can
here.
You, for those of us who are not part of those regional councils, can you explain how that position works? Because every regional council has a different staffing model, and some groups are sharing staff and some groups are not.
I think that is a fantastic question, because it is amazing to get to learn from each other. I also recognize that that can take a lot of time as to how that position ends up working. So I would love an answer that is like 20 seconds, and then I would love to provide an opportunity for that more in-depth answer to be shared out so folks can get a better understanding, because we do want to learn from each other, but we also want to try and get through the stuff that we have on the agenda today. So James, do you have or somebody from Antler River Watershed with the
I'll give the 10-second answer. Yes, in Antler River, we have a paid accountable chaplain in the region whose position is to minister to the ministers. So we have that position paid by the region to minister to the staff, the ministers in the region. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. And yeah, I will do my best, but I encourage folks to remind me through the business, whatever the business address is, that you would like that question, or post the question into feed loop in the Q&A is probably better. Post that question in there and we'll get a more in-depth answer posted there, because that is great. Mark, you're okay, go.
I didn't have any questions on mine, so I thought I could have one here. I just wanted to expand on that, that position of chaplain is shared between our 3 regional councils. So the chaplain spends a third of time in Antler River Watershed, a third in Horseshoe Falls, and a third in Western Ontario Waterways is how we have split that up.
Perfect. I did say 20 seconds, each did 10, so we're all good. Thank you. Thank you to the 2 of you as well. I'm going to invite the moderator to come and intro the next worship element for us.
So yes, we're going to try something here. If you've been on the last few times, you may have noticed that we're having a bit of a difficulty working with Zoom around one specific issue, and that's breakout groups. So we're really fortunate that the team that we're working with, both at the General Counsel office and with Bespoke, are really working to help us figure out how to do this. And so we're going to take a moment to pass the peace, and I am hoping that we are going to be able to move into breakout groups that will be, maybe 6 or 7 people. And we would invite someone in that group, because there's not going to be a host, it's going to be random. We'd invite someone to start by wishing people the peace of Christ and taking just 10 or 15 seconds to introduce yourself, and then pass the peace with everyone and invite someone else to simply pass the peace and invite someone else. If that doesn't work, just give us, 15 seconds or so, and we will do something else. But the other thing is, if you would prefer not to go into small group, just don't click join when it shows up on your screen. Okay, Bespoke folks, let's see what we can do in moving into small groups. Peace of Christ be with you, folks. Oh, wow.
Alan, while I have your attention, I have a technical question.
Shoot.
Okay. For feed loop, like another reason I'm a little behind is when I click on the site, it doesn't automatically log me in, and I was having trouble with my password. When I clicked on the email link that you guys sent out, it did log me in automatically. But when I just clicked on the feed loop, it didn't.
Like yeah, so you're gonna have like try to just keep the one that you when you click on the link, try to get your browser to remember that one. I find that if you try to go in through like feed loop, if you Google them, you're not going to find it. Right. Keep you logged in depending on your browser settings for, you know, a couple weeks anyway, probably longer, but it might log you out after a certain period of time depending on settings. So that's when you're going to have to deal with it again, unfortunately.
Okay, because I tried to use the password that you guys sent me, but it said it was invalid. So
yeah, I don't know. That's what the link's for. Sorry. Okay,
Alan, just before you begin, it's the moderator. Could you remind people that they may need to reset their interpretation in coming back from small group, please?
I would love to. You just did. I think most folks are back now.
Okay,
but,
great.
We'll do it again. And okay, so thanks everyone. Welcome back. As you may have heard the moderator say, you will need to potentially reset your interpretation. So you want to go down to the globe at the bottom. You might need to move your mouse or touch your screen and pick the language of interpretation you would like. It is fantastic. It worked. I am so excited. And yeah, we do setting the random groups. We both set somewhat random on size, but also when we give folks the opportunity not to go, you could have been randomly been assigned both interpreters, myself, the moderator, and some of the staff from Bespoke who are here to help. So you might have ended up with less people. You could have ended up with more people. That's kind of the way the random goes. So I hope it was kind of fun to get to pass the piece with each other. We did a little passing of the piece here as we waited as well. You also, I think everybody came back muted as well, which is fantastic. I just wanted to make sure that that happened as well. So welcome back. Now that we have received in a different way this time, the peace of Christ from each other. We're going to move on to the next proposal before us. So this is a 3-pack coming together here. ARW02. I've got it down as ARW02 and 03 plus SW04 on vocational review. I maybe should have checked this a little better before it is, but that's what my list says. So I'm going to start with that. And I have Jim Evans down, but I'm sure that we're going to get others too. So Jim, who else are you expecting?
They are two separate. So ARW02 is vocational review and discipline accountability, and AR03 is vocational process accountability. So they are two separate proposals, even though they kind of.
I was pretty sure they were separate proposals, and I think we just grouped them together because it was a similar theme. And so, well, you can ask your question on either one, and Kofi's already, which is fantastic.
Okay. Yes. So, and we do have. I do have Allison as subject matter expert as well. So she.
Okay. So we'll have Allison ready if we need, but we're going to stick with Jim as the representative from the regional councils. Kofi, you have a question for ARW02. Kofi, si tu as une question là, tu peux le demander maintenant.
Merci. Ma question a peut-être 3 volets sur le ARW02. Est-ce que ça voudra dire que les sanctions, pour être équitables et justes partout, sont classés sur une grille ou échelle croissante en fonction de la gravité de la faute. Par exemple, si la faute est sérieuse mais non grave, etc. Est-ce que c'est ça? Et le deuxième volet, est-ce que l'Église unie, en tant qu'employeur, a son éthique sur laquelle il se base pour les sanctions, ou bien il s'aligne derrière le Code du travail canadien ou bien la Convention collective canadienne? Et la troisième, c'est de savoir si, dans l'histoire de l'Église unie, il y a déjà eu un cas qui a dépassé l'Église et qui est allé jusque devant les juridictions provinciales ou fédérales. Merci.
Jorg, I need it translated, please.
Sorry, Jim, did you have on the interpretation? You need to go down to interpretation in English, and then you would have heard the whole thing in English.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
So folks, if you want to hear everything in one single language, you need to move your mouse on the screen or touch the screen, go down to interpretation and select English, and then you'll hear, or French, if you want to hear everything in French. You select the French. And if you select the English, then we have interpreters who are interpreting live as we go so that we can stay on track here.
I'm sorry. Allison, did you by any chance?
I heard the question, but I'm a little unclear about the question. Could we just get some sort of some clarification?
Est-ce que je peux résumer ou reprendre?
Ouais, s'il vous plaît.
One second, Alan. This is.
Can I try in English? My English is not so good.
Un moment, Kofi. Alan, can I just clarify? This is Maya from the business table. If you are okay with English and French, then you don't have to choose an interpreter. Am I correct? But if you're okay understanding English and French, you don't pick an interpreter. But if you know from the beginning of our sessions that you can't understand one of the languages, then you should click on interpretation. Is that what you're trying to say? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. Kofi, ouais, si tu veux faire un résumé encore, tu peux le faire en français si.
Oui, la question, je peux aller?
Ouais.
Oui, c'est de savoir si l'Église unie a son éthique sur laquelle il se base pour échelonner les sanctions en fonction de la gravité de la faute. Ça, c'est la première question. Ou bien la deuxième, est-ce que l'Église unie, en tant qu'employeur, se lie derrière, est derrière ou bien se place sur la convention collective ou bien le Code du travail canadien? La troisième, c'est de savoir si dans sa gestion de son personnel, est-ce qu'il y a déjà eu un cas ou un litige ou un conflit qui a dépassé l'Église et est allé devant les juridictions provinciales ou fédérales?
Merci encore, Kofi. You get them that time, Jim?
Okay, so do I have to click on French to respond? Or
no. To respond, you just speak.
Okay, so the simple answer is, Kofi, that clergy in Canada fall under separate legislation. So we do not fall under the same laws that other workers in Canada fall under. So we have a separate category. So and it would take too long to go into all of the situations, but that's the simple answer for right now.
I see Alan Hall with a potentially clarification or question.
Yeah, just further with that question, we have very clearly laid out processes for review and discipline that are based on principles of natural law, that are followed with great care and attention, and as part of the responsibility of the Office of Vocation. When occasionally we have been in civil courts in regards to actions that we have taken, one of the first questions that's asked by the court is whether or not we followed our own processes. Because as Jim has said, we as clergy are considered office holders, which is different than an employee. The responsibilities and obligations of office holders and the offices that they represent are very similar to and are more over time parallel with those that one would consider common labor practice and labor law. So they're close, they're similar, and yet they are different. And so the courts generally look to our processes, which I say are very clearly laid out in the manual and in the handbooks for the Office of Vocation.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have questions? If you do, please raise your virtual hand. Kathy.
Kathy Hamilton, Conseil régional Nagonhaga. Kofi, avez-vous reçu des réponses de des questions que vous avez posées?
Oui, j'ai reçu, mais ça devait être pour moi encore très approfondi. On l'a expliqué que c'est encore un peu plus profond. Je pense que c'est rentré un peu dans un domaine un peu trop technique.
Merci Cathy et Kofi. La question c'était est-ce qu'il y avait des vraies réponses? J'espérais que Alan répondait un peu plus à les questions aussi et je pense qu'il avait un peu. Mais ouais, les distinctions techniques, c'est un peu plus difficile. Alors, si tu veux revenir, Kofi, et demander les choses précises que tu aimerais, on peut essayer de te donner un peu plus d'informations.
Ouais, je vais refouiller les sites et si je ne comprends pas toujours, je vous reviendrai.
Okay. So I think we're okay. Sorry, I'm getting multiple things. I think I got there. So, Kofi, je comprends, t'es correct pour l'instant, qui est bon. Et on peut essayer de trouver les réponses plus profondes pour vous aussi, des moyens différents. So I'm not seeing any other questions. Just want to, so this was ARW02, Vocational Review and Discipline Accountability. So I'm going to transition us to see if there is anything specific. I introduced them as the same, including ARW03 and SW04, because they are similar, but they are different. So if there's anything specific on the vocational process accountability ones, in case you weren't clear that you could have asked those before, I'm just going to give a sec for that. Judy.
So thank you. So on ARW03 and SW04, you speak about what the General Council could do, and upon ordination or commissioning, ordinance or commission ends, they'd be invited. So you totally dish designated lay ministers because they are recognized. They are also in the candidacy process. And you don't mention them at all in either one of those documents. So my my question would be, so why did you leave those out of the candidacy process in invited to conduct a confidential review of the candidacy board and the Office of Vocation?
I would take that as a friendly amendment, and it was certainly an oversight for which I personally apologize. So definitely we would include designated lay ministers in that, and I would take that as a friendly amendment to the motion.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I think well heard, thank you. So in our process as we go now, we need to make sure that in our discussion groups, if we're going to be including similar language, that's something we want to make sure we include. It is the kind of thing that we can catch, that the facilitation team might catch and include as well, and just go because we know that's how we operate. But you know, it is a thing for folks to clarify as well. And yeah, Sherilyn, did you have a question or follow-up?
I was just going to note that on ARWs in the notes from the regional council included all streams administered.
Perfect, thank you. And I will say, as I think that might be our questions here on these ones, for folks, when you're asking questions, you are welcome to, you are not required to, turn on your camera as well as your microphone, and then we can see you in the mix and we'll spotlight you, but we can't spotlight or even put up what is your name in the spotlight with your camera off. So then we're just kind of, we're counting on you to say who you are and where you're from, which you should be doing anyway, just a little extra if your camera is off. So I'm not seeing any other questions there, so thank you, folks, for being here. And I'm going to move us on to ECO02, Cooperative Communities of Faith, and invite Paul Reed into the spotlight with me. Thank you, Paul. Do you have any questions you've seen already you wish to respond to, or any comments to be given before we ask for other questions?
Yeah, Bill, I just want to say that Paul Reed in East Central Ontario Regional Council, when here we are trying to assist small congregations find ways of calling ministers. And we do that by teaming them up. And I make reference to cooperative communities of faith, cooperating pastoral charges that are teaming together. That's the language that we would be using just to explain to the relationships that might be there. And of course, there's other alternative relationships as well.
Great, thank you, Paul. Any questions for clarification at this point? If you have one, please raise your virtual hand. Francis.
Thank you. Francis Kitson, Living Skies region. So Paul, I just want to clarify, as someone who's not all that clear on exactly how a shared a multi-point pastoral charge works, would I be correct in thinking that what you're proposing is a structure that would allow for more flexibility than what is defined in what we already have in multi-point or shared point pastoral charges?
Yes. So to use an example, we might have two neighboring pastoral charges. Could be 1 point, 2 point. Each of them only now searching for a half-time minister because that's all they had, it's viable. But they could search together and offer one minister two half-time positions. So that type of arrangement. We've got another location where we've got 5 pastoral charges, all of them nearby, all of them that had part-time ministers, working together now to be able to employ a ministry team, a full-time and part-time ministry team, so that they can meet their needs. And you know, they all go join together at different places for different things.
So this would just be a little more nimble and save pastoral charges or congregations the paperwork and legwork of actually having to disband or reform.
It does that. It also allows some of the historic pastoral charges to retain their identity and not lose it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Heather.
Heather Senglands from Prairie to Pine. Paul, we
run into this a lot where we are. And so one of the ways that we deal with it is through memorandums of understanding, but those are not apparently very good for immigration if we're looking at bringing folks from overseas. Can you explain how this might mitigate that problem? Or would it? Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly what problem you're running into, but I think that part of what we're asking for is that the denomination is able to offer some type of recognition to this, just as we offer recognition to multi-point pastoral charges. Can we officially recognize these differently? And one of the struggles we know right now is that if people are working together, they can't work together through Church Hub, because Church Hub cannot acknowledge these types of relationships. So yes, I would hope that in being able to acknowledge and recognize these different alternative arrangements, it would eliminate problems that you might be experiencing.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for keeping the question and the answer. 2 questions for clarification. This is an easy one that we can start throwing out ideas. So I just want to remind us that ideas are for the discussion session, and I hope there's lots of them. I got some myself that I wish I could throw in, but I'm not a commissioner. Whitney, a question for clarification.
I was offering if you wanted clarification on why it's an issue with immigration, as I just went through all that.
I appreciate the offer. I think the recognition that it is a thing that we should be trying to deal with is where we're going to stick at this point. But thank you for that offer, Whitney. I'm not seeing any other questions for clarification here. I'm going to thank you, Paul, for your time and the work you did on the video and the like. And I'm going to move us now into our next worship element. We have a testimony video.
Jesus is an invitational instigator who implodes existing ideologies with weapons of mass transformation, like peace and justice and God's love.
Okay, so we are now we're going to move into our next block here, and we are a little bit behind where we might have been, but we did have a lovely time passing the piece in Breakout. So you're going to give me a little grace. I know and appreciate as we try to get through remaining couple proposals we have here. So up next, I have ECC01 Clergy Consultative Committee. I'm going to invite Ryan McNally here to join me in the spotlight. And this is one that we did not get a video for, unfortunately. So Ryan, if you want to give a short little spiel before we open it up to questions, please take this opportunity to say a little bit.
Sure. Sorry about the video. Family life is chaotic for us. I guess I'll start. This proposal comes about because I have a habit of being a church nerd and reading what's going on at the General Council Executive, and then I try to find out what the decision was. And I did that a couple of times. Once when there was a pausing the triennial cost of living readjustment. That was done, and I guess just shared with the General Council Executive, and then the decision in September to eliminate the optional health and dental benefits. That caused I'm going to say quite a storm in some social media groups of clergy. And as we've all seen, I think in the last few years, solving problems over social media is probably something we might want to try to avoid if we really want to engage with each other and hear each other's stories. It's so easy in a post to just be angry or to not have time to really clarify what's going on. And so, the institution is stressed. We've heard about that all through this time. I think a lot of clergy were surprised at the degree to which the General Council can simply change the terms of a call effectively by removing options or not realigning through cost of living groups. And that the General Council, essentially, its staff recommendations, there's great flexibility to say, to decide what can happen and how compensation could change from one time to another, or various things. So given the sort of outpouring of emotion, it seems to me we need some ways to involve clergy, and when I say clergy, I include designated lay ministers listening, to involve a larger group of people in a conversation about how we're working with the people who are essentially the majority of the staff of this institution. So some recommendations on that front, or some thoughts of what we could do. I mean, we could simply hold a conversation. Having a conversation about these issues in our discussion group, I think, will be important for the denomination to share some of people can share their own individual stories, and we can pass that around. And I think that's helpful because it helps us understand one another more deeply, rather than just being posts. We might want to renew some of the research. My first General Council, they had a whole bunch of research about isolation in ministry. I wonder where we're at today at the end of a pandemic, with many congregations saying they're more stressed. Maybe we want to look at some kind of group that could review or offer feedback or consultation on these different proposals and changes, so that it is more participatory and there's a larger number of people who know what's happening, and so people don't feel so maybe blindsided by what's going on.
Thank you, Ryan. And I will note for many of us, your video was cutting in and out, and sometimes the words were too. I managed to get the gist.
Yeah, I'm on a very poor internet.
Yeah, it's the way she goes sometimes. And so thank you for doing your best. And sorry, folks, if you missed little bits. Hopefully you got enough to get the gist of what Ryan was sharing. I do see a question already from Keith Simmons.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for the proposal. I just wondered if the intent was to limit it to ministry personnel, or many more folk in the United Church who are part of the pension and benefits who are also affected by national decisions, and might also want to have some voice in that.
I think in this case, my focus was on how do ministry personnel as effectively as staff be involved in these decisions. Although, as I talk about this to lay members of church boards, a number of them are surprised that there even were changes. They didn't know there had been changes. And those changes affect people differently. I'm a parent with 2 kids with special needs, have a different set of issues than maybe somebody who's retired and has a great benefit plan through previous employment. So I'm really looking, because often when we get together as a group, we are all looking out for the interests of the whole group. And as clergy, you feel you need to look out for the interest of the church. And maybe sometimes we put our interests and our concerns to the bottom for the benefit of the institution.
Yeah, I concur. What I meant was one of my colleagues is in administration here. Her only benefits were the United Church benefits. And when they were reduced, the effect on her, because her salary scale is much less than mine, was much harder to bear than mine. So I just wondered about her voice in that process and other.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I don't know how. I've spent so much time in rural churches where most people are volunteering, and I'm the only staff with benefits, for example, that doesn't always come to mind, but you raise a good point.
Great, thank you. Hearing some more things for us to remember as we move into our discussion phase, and thank you for encouraging discussion as well. I love the discussion part. Okay, but I need to keep us going. I'm not seeing any other questions here. Thank you, Ryan, and I know we'll be monitoring the feed loop Q&A, so if you do have questions, please put them in there and we'll get Ryan or others to respond to them as we go. And I'm going to move us to our last set of proposals for today, ARW05 and SW08, Care of the Church's Marginalized. And I'm going to invite Barry Reeder to join me back in the spotlight for this one.
Yeah, and if Jim wants to join me as well, because one of the things I didn't mention in the video was the motion from Antler River watershed, which talked about that in order to keep in touch with people that are on the DSL list, that they need to inform General Counsel's office about any kind of changes in contact information. So I think that's important. I just wanted to be upfront around that. It wasn't until I was reading the notes there, and thanks whoever put the reference notes in the feed. That was great as well. So this one is very brief. It's just that when people go on the DSL list, either disciplined or voluntarily, in some ways they're removed from a process of the church and connecting with and being connected with the church. So when changes happen in the manual, they may not be aware of that. And so all we're just saying is that General Counsel needs, if there's any changes that happen, they need to be informed of those changes.
Great. Thank you, folks. Oh, we do have a question. Beth.
Yes, I was reading this, and of course, I've been involved with presbytery and whatnot, and recommendations for the discontinued service list. And the one rule that I can remember is that the person is told not to represent themselves as a minister of the church. But can you give an example of a change that we would make at General Counsel right now or this summer that would affect somebody that has been on the DSL for several years? Just maybe from past experience. Like, I was trying to think of an example to be able to understand this proposal.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think that there's any changes end up happening at this point in time. So this is just more kind of forward looking. And I think just as far as clarity, I know of one member that was using old checks and wrote a check, I think, to the church and still had Reverend on it, and was chastised because of it. And the other thing too is that we've kind of noticed is that at times, that people are treated differently. So those that are in government sometimes are still referred to as Reverend and a minister, but yet they're on the DSL list. And so, I think the rules aren't being done, appropriately. So I think this is just, again, forward-looking, that if there are changes, let people know. Because people that are on the discontinued list, they're not going to be following what changes end up happening in General Counsel. So it's just a courtesy to those that are marginalized for the church.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have questions for these proposals? Not seeing any at this point. So again, you may still have the opportunity to put them in if you do have questions into the Q&A and feed loop, and we'll do our best to get you answers. Thank you, Barry and Jim, for joining once again in the spotlight on this one. I'm going to invite us now to hear no, I'm not yet. I'm jumping ahead too far. We're almost done, but I got too excited. I'm going to invite Mary Claude Manga, one of our friends in council, to join me to share some announcements.
Je suis là. Alors, j'y vais?
Allons-y.
Bonsoir. Pendant une longue période de 6 mois, nous sommes appelés à nous réunir comme disciples du Christ pour faire avancer son œuvre parmi nous. Pour ce faire, Plusieurs personnes jouent des rôles différents. Nancy et moi avons été désignés comme amis de la Cour. Notre rôle est de garder contact avec vous et vous encourager à partager vos occasions de joie pour célébrer ensemble et aussi à partager vos temps de tristesse, le partager et le porter dans nos prières. Alors vous êtes encouragés. Alain va vous dire exactement après où vous devez aller poster ces annonces. Alors, l'équipe d'adoration accepte toujours les soumissions de vidéos de personnes offrant une compréhension d'une seule phrase, si c'est possible. Vous avez entendu depuis le début jusqu'à présent des personnes qui répondent à la question pour vous, qui dites-vous que je suis? Qui dites-vous que je suis? Alors, à cette question-là, ce n'est pas fermé. Vous pouvez aussi, si ça vous dit, de faire une petite vidéo, je pense que c'est 2 minutes, une phrase, et vous l'envoyez au culte à commercial General Council 44.ca. Je vais mettre ça sur notre chat. Enfin, l'annonce que j'ai reçue ce soir, la mise à la nomination d'une modératrice ou d'un modérateur de l'Église ferme le 16 juin. Alors, nous vous encourageons à prier, discerner et à procéder. Bonsoir. Merci pour votre écoute.
Merci beaucoup, Marie-Claude, pour votre présence et pour partager l'information avec nous. Comme elle a dit, l'adresse courriel, si tu veux envoyer des choses, tu peux envoyer à n'importe des unes pour la conseillère générale, alors l'une de l'information, et aussi, si tu veux, au business GC44 @unitedchurch.ca. And I do see that we have in the chat stuff jumping quick, but the information from the worship team was put in the chat. So if that was of interest, please take a look in there and how to submit and all kinds of fancy stuff. As we prepare to close, I will invite one of the words from our partner to be shared with us at this time.
We don't need to always to be a part of being the willingness to learn. I think we also as a church know enough to do good and to improve the situation of the people, especially of the people who are on the margins. I am in the meeting because we've been invited. I think it's important to be together as a community. This by itself is a gift. Whether it is in person or virtually, to be together, because we are brothers and sisters, we are one family, one faith. So that we learn from each other, we do mistakes together, and hopefully we succeed together. Thank you for the invitation.
My understanding is that was Omar Harame. Now, can someone remind me, please? Yes, thank you. Omar is from Sabil, Jerusalem, one of our global partners. Thank you. Oh, just 1 second. Sorry. So for our prayers tonight, I know that most of us are keeping track of what is happening throughout the world. I know that most of us have been, well, actually, hopefully all of us have been listening to what we've been sharing tonight about the United Church of Canada, about ministry personnel in the United Church of Canada, about structures and all those kinds of things. And so I'd like to invite us in a moment to remind ourselves that in all of this, God is with us. Our prayer time is really, in this moment, is going to be a remembrance of that. So I would invite you to join with me, and I've printed it in the chat. I've put the a new creed printed in the chat in English and in French. So you may need to go back a little bit if you want to find the language that you would like. And I apologize. I know that I missed a number of accents en français. Je m'excuse. Mais. So will you join with me? Nous ne sommes pas seuls. Nous vivons dans le monde que Dieu a créé, qui est venu en Jésus, parole faite chair, pour réconcilier et renouveler, qui travaille en nous et parmi nous par son esprit. Nous avons confiance en lui. Nous sommes appelés à constituer l'Église pour célébrer la présence de Dieu, pour vivre avec respect dans la création, pour aimer et servir les autres, pour rechercher la justice et résister au mal, pour proclamer Jésus crucifié et ressuscité, notre juge et notre espérance. Dans la vie, dans la mort et dans la vie au-delà de la mort, Dieu est avec nous. Nous ne sommes pas seuls. Grâce soit rendue à Dieu. And the people said, Amen. 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 La bénédiction, our benediction, please.
Avec une spiritualité profonde, soyez braves, bien-aimés. Par une vie de disciples courageuse, soyez bénis, bien-aimés. Par un engagement audacieux en faveur de la justice, soyez courageux, bien-aimés. Vous les braves, vous êtes à Dieu. Vous les courageux, vous êtes au Christ. Vous les bénis, vous êtes à l'Esprit.
And until we meet again, go in peace, friends. Good night.
Au revoir.
Good night, Richard. Good night, everyone. God bless.
Right. Have a good night. Bonne nuit tout le monde.
Toi aussi.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.